The last evacuation shuttle left station at exactly midnight. Admiral Park watched it go from the observation deck, her hands clasped behind her back. The shuttle carried 300 council citizens, scientists with their crystal bodies, diplomats in their water tanks, workers with their clicking mandibles and too many legs. None of them looked back. Did not blame them, they were coming. 47 warships, each one bigger than anything humanity had ever built. They would arrive in 6 hours. The Council's relief fleet was 3 days away. The math was simple. Everyone on this station was going to die. "Admiral," said Lieutenant, stepping up beside her. He was young, 26 years old. He had joined the Terran Navy because he wanted to see the stars. Now he was going to die among them. "The last shuttle is away. All non-combat personnel have been evacuated." "How many of us are left?" 212, ma'am, all human." Nodded slowly. The Council species had not even asked if the humans wanted to leave. They had simply assumed that the primitive newcomers would flee like everyone else. After all, what could humans do against the humanity had only joined the Galactic Council 70 years ago. They were children compared to species that had traveled between stars for 10,000 years. But the Council had forgotten something important. They had forgotten what humans were made of. Lieutenant said, "Seal the docking bays, all of them." Hesitated for only a moment. "Yes, ma'am." He walked away to give the orders, stayed at the window watching the stars. Somewhere out there the fleet was burning toward them. Supreme Warlord commanded that fleet. He had conquered 42 worlds. He had killed billions. He had never lost a battle. He was about to learn that humans did not care about his record. The station's intercom crackled. "Press the button to broadcast to every corridor, every room, every dark corner where her people might be hiding." "This is Admiral Park," she said. Her voice was calm, steady. "All human personnel report to the Central Armory in 1 hour. We are not evacuating. We are not running. We are going to hold this station until the relief fleet arrives, or we are going to die trying." She paused. "I know what I am asking. I know the odds, but I also know who we are. We are the species that crawled out of caves and built cities. We are the species that looked at the moon and said, 'We will walk there.' We are the species that refused to die when the universe tried to kill us 1,000 different ways." Her hand tightened on the console. "The Council thinks we are weak because we are young. They think we are prey because we are small. Today, we show them what happens when you corner a human. Today, we teach them fear." She released the button. The silence that followed was heavy. 30 minutes later, Captain Lee of the Council Peacekeepers tried to dock his shuttle at Bay 7. He found the doors welded shut. His communications request was answered by Lieutenant. "Station, this is Captain Lee. Open your docking bay immediately. I am here to evacuate remaining personnel." "Negative," Captain replied. "All docking bays are sealed. No evacuation is taking place." There was a long pause. Lee was a being of living crystal who had lived for 600 years. He had seen many strange things in his long life, but he had never seen a species choose to die when survival was possible. "Lieutenant," he said slowly, "do you understand what you are doing? They will be here in less than 6 hours. You have no ships, you have no reinforcements, you have no hope." "We have 200 soldiers," said, "and we have our orders." "You will all die." "Probably, but we will take as many of them with us as we can. And maybe, when the Council hears what happened here, they will remember that someone stood when everyone else ran." Lee was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer. "I will tell them," he said. "I will make sure they know." His shuttle turned and flew away into the darkness. In the Central Armory, Admiral Park looked at her soldiers. They were so young. Most of them had never seen real combat. They had signed up for patrol duties, for escort missions, for the boring work of keeping peace in a galaxy that had known peace for 8,000 years. Now they were going to fight the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever seen. Sargent was the first to speak. He was 34 years old, a career soldier with a wife and daughter back on Earth. He would never see them again. He knew this. He had accepted it. "Admiral," he said, "what's the plan?" Smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a wolf baring its teeth. "The plan is simple," she said. "We make them pay for every corridor, every room, every inch of this station. We use every trick, every trap, every dirty tactic we can think of. We fight like humans fight, without rules, without mercy, without the pretty honor that the council species care so much about." She looked around the room. "They have never fought humans before. They have fought the who break like glass when you hit them hard enough. They have fought the who surrender when the water runs out. They have fought the who scatter when their queen dies." Her voice hardened. "But they have never fought a species that would rather burn everything to the ground than admit defeat. They have never fought a species that invented spite. They have never fought us." Lieutenant Shin raised her hand. She was an engineer, not a soldier, but she had volunteered to stay. "What about the reactor, ma'am? If we lose control of the station, they could use it as a forward base." "If we lose control of the station," said, "I will personally destroy the reactor. The explosion will take out half their fleet." She paused. "That is not a threat, that is a promise." The room was quiet. Private Nam, the youngest soldier on the station, stood up. She was 19 years old. She had joined the Navy to pay for her mother's medical treatment back home. "Admiral," she said, "I just want to say something. I know we are probably going to die, but I am glad I am here with all of you. If I have to die, I want to die standing next to people like you." Put his hand on her shoulder. "We are all glad you are here, Private." Nodded. "Let us get to work. We have 6 hours to turn this station into a death trap. I want them to remember this place for 1,000 years. I want them to tell stories about station to scare their children." The soldiers moved out, each one carrying weapons and explosives and the quiet certainty of their own death. Above them, the stars watched in silence, and somewhere in the darkness between those stars, 47 warships burned toward their doom. They did not know it yet, but they would learn. 3 months before the Battle of Station, the leaders of Earth gathered in a bunker beneath Sol. The room was cold and gray. The walls were thick enough to survive a nuclear explosion. The people inside carried the weight of 8 billion lives on their shoulders. General stood at the front of the room. He was 62 years old. His hair was gray. His face was lined with scars from wars that most people had forgotten. He had fought in the African water wars. He had led the defense of the Pacific Islands during the Great Flooding. He had seen humanity at its worst and at its best. Now he was about to ask for something terrible. "They have taken 17 systems in the last 6 months," he said. The holographic display behind him showed a map of the galaxy. Red zones spread across it like a disease. "The Council's defensive line is collapsing. Their fleets are running. Their soldiers are dying." Defense Minister Han leaned forward. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She had been a soldier once before politics claimed her. "What does the Council want from us?" she asked. "Bodies," said simply. "They want our soldiers to fill the gaps in their lines. They want us to stand in front of the guns while their important species retreat to safety." The room was silent. "They still think we are expendable," said Colonel. She was the youngest person at the table, 38 years old, a tactical genius who had rewritten the training manuals for space combat. "They still think we are the primitives who just arrived at the party." "Can you blame them?" asked Admiral Ryu. He was responsible for all human naval forces in Council space. "Our ships are slower than theirs. Our weapons are weaker. Our soldiers do not have crystal skin or 6 arms or the ability to breathe in vacuum. On paper, we are the weakest member of the Council." Smiled. It was a dangerous smile. On paper, he repeated. Yes, on paper we are weak, but paper does not tell the whole story. He changed the display. Now it showed images from human history. A small force of Greek soldiers standing against a Persian army, Russian civilians fighting in frozen streets, Korean soldiers holding a bridge against impossible odds. The council species have lived in peace for 8,000 years, said. They have forgotten what war really means. They think war is about numbers, about calculations, about finding the optimal strategy to minimize losses and maximize gains. He shook his head. That is not war. That is mathematics. Real war is something else entirely. Real war is about will, about determination, about the absolute refusal to accept defeat even when defeat is certain. Han understood. Her eyes widened. You want to use us as an example, she said. I want to remind the galaxy what humans are capable of, replied. The Council is falling apart because they have lost hope. They see the coming and they think, we cannot win, so why should we fight? They need someone to show them that fighting without hope is still fighting. They need someone to prove that even the weakest species can hurt the strongest enemy. Nodded slowly. If we can really hurt them in a way no one else has managed, it might inspire the other species to stand and fight. Exactly. Admiral Ryu frowned. What you are proposing will cost lives, many lives, human lives. Yes, said. He did not look away. It will. I am not pretending otherwise. I am asking our soldiers to die in ways that will make the galaxy take notice. I am asking them to sacrifice themselves not for victory, but for hope. The room was quiet for a long time. Finally, Han spoke. What do you need? Outlined his plan. He called it the doctrine of defiance. The concept was simple. Instead of sending human soldiers to hold important positions where their weakness would be exposed, he would send them to hold impossible positions. Places where no one expected anyone to survive. Places where the only purpose was to delay the enemy, to hurt them, to make them afraid. Station is the first target, he said. It sits at the junction of 3 major trade routes, the needed to supply their advance. The Council has already written it off as lost. They are evacuating everyone. But not the humans, said. No, not the humans. We are going to leave a garrison there, 200 soldiers. They will hold the station for as long as possible. They will die, Admiral Ryu said. Yes, but their death will be broadcast across the galaxy. Every council species will watch. They will see humans fighting the hand-to-hand. They will see humans refusing to give up even when there is no hope. And maybe, just maybe, they will remember that courage is not about winning. It is about standing. The vote was unanimous. 3 weeks later, Admiral Park received her orders. She read them twice. Then she read them a third time. They want us to die, said Lieutenant, standing beside her. Yes, agreed, but they want us to die well. She thought about her life, her family back on Earth, her parents who had worked in the rice fields of province until their bodies gave out, her brother who had died in the African water wars 20 years ago, her husband who had passed from cancer last year. She had nothing left to lose, nothing except her soldiers. Gather the officers, she said. I want everyone to know exactly what we are being asked to do. No lies, no pretty speeches, just the truth. Hesitated. You do not think they will refuse? Smiled. These are humans, Lieutenant. When you tell a human that something is impossible, they do not run away. They roll up their sleeves and prove you wrong. She was right. When she explained the mission to her officers, when she told them that they were being asked to die for a chance at inspiring the galaxy, not a single person objected. They understood. They accepted. They volunteered. Sargent was the most vocal supporter. My daughter is 3 years old, he said. She is back on Earth with her mother. If I run from this fight, what kind of father am I? What kind of example do I set? I would rather die here fighting than live knowing I was a coward. Lieutenant Shin nodded. I joined the Navy because I believed humans had a place in the stars. If we abandon this station, if we prove the Council right about us being weak and useless, we will never be respected. We will always be the species that runs. Private Nam, the youngest soldier on the station, stood up. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. I am scared, she admitted. I do not want to die, but I am more scared of what happens if we do nothing. They will keep coming. They will kill everyone. If dying here can help stop them even a little bit, then I am willing to do it. Looked at her soldiers. These brave, foolish, wonderful people who were ready to give everything for a cause larger than themselves. I am proud to serve with all of you, she said. Whatever happens, remember this. We are not dying for the Council. We are not dying for politics. We are dying for each other. We are dying for our families back home. We are dying to prove that humans matter. She raised her hand in salute. Now let us get ready. They are coming, and we are going to give them a welcome they will never forget. The preparations began. The traps were set. The explosives were planted. The corridors were turned into killing grounds. On Earth, General watched the sensor feeds showing the fleet approaching station. He knew that 200 of his people were about to die. He hoped their deaths would mean something. He hoped the galaxy was watching. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at exactly 300 hours, station time. 47 warships arranged in perfect formation. Each one was a mountain of black metal and angry red lights. Each one carried 1,000 soldiers bred for war. Supreme Warlord stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Hunger. He was 12 feet tall. His 4 arms were thick with muscle. His skin was covered in the scars of 100 battles. He had never known defeat. Scan the station, he ordered. His tactical officer obeyed. The results came back in seconds. 200 life signs, Warlord, all human. Made a sound that might have been laughter. The primitive stayed behind. How amusing. Send 1 wave of boarding pods. We will take the station in an hour. It was a reasonable assumption. They had fought humans before in small skirmishes along the border. They knew that human bodies were soft. Human bones broke easily. Human blood spilled at the slightest cut. What they did not know was that human spirits were made of something harder than steel. The first wave of boarding pods hit the station at 3:47 hours. Each pod carried 20 shock troops in full combat armor. They breached the hull at Section 7, cutting through metal with plasma torches and pouring into the corridor beyond. They expected to find cowering defenders or empty hallways. They found Sergeant. Had spent the last 6 hours turning Section 7 into a death trap. The corridor was lined with monofilament wire, invisible to the eye and strong enough to cut through armor. The walls were rigged with mining explosives stolen from the station's cargo hold. The floor panels concealed pressure plates connected to more explosives. They were halfway down the corridor when triggered the first detonation. The explosion killed 12 of them instantly. The survivors tried to retreat, but the monofilament wire caught them. They stumbled, fell, and the wire cut through their armor like a knife through paper. Stepped out of his hiding place. He was not a large man. He was not particularly strong or fast, but he had a rifle in his hands and hate in his heart. "This is for my daughter," he said, and opened fire. The battle for Section 7 lasted 43 minutes, and his squad of 12 soldiers killed 106. They used every dirty trick they could think of. They collapsed ceilings on enemy heads. They vented atmosphere into rooms filled with boarders. They fought with knives and fists when their ammunition ran out. When the last of them fell, the commander stood among the bodies in shock. He had lost more soldiers taking one corridor than he had lost taking entire planets. "What are these creatures?" he muttered. On the bridge of the Eternal Hunger, received the report. His 4 hands clenched into fists. "Send another wave," he ordered. "Double the numbers." The second wave hit Section 4. Lieutenant Shin was waiting. Was an engineer, not a soldier. She had never killed anyone before this day, but she understood machines, and she understood that the station itself could be a weapon. She had spent hours crawling through the maintenance tunnels, rewiring the environmental controls and the power grid. Now, as the poured through the breach in Section 4, she sat in a small room 3 corridors away, watching through security cameras. "Come on," she whispered, "just a little further." They advanced, they checked corners, they scanned for traps, they were learning. But they did not think to look up. When half of them were directly beneath the main ventilation shaft, triggered the emergency fire suppression system. But instead of foam, the vents released a cloud of chemical coolant stolen from the station's reactor systems. The coolant was not immediately deadly, but it ate through armor in seconds. The screams that followed were horrible. Closed her eyes. She did not enjoy this, but she would do whatever was necessary. "For Earth," she whispered, "for everyone back home." 3 hours into the battle, was no longer amused. He had lost 400 soldiers, 400 of his best troops, killed by a species that his intelligence officers had called militarily insignificant. "Bring in the war beasts," he ordered. The war beasts were nightmares made flesh. They were 6-legged creatures the size of ground vehicles, with armored hides and jaws that could bite through steel. They had no fear. They could not be reasoned with. They existed only to kill. 20 of them were released into Section 2. Private Nam watched them come through the security feed. She was alone. Her squad had been killed 30 minutes ago, holding a junction point against an assault. She had survived by hiding in a supply closet. Now she looked at the war beasts and knew that there was no way to stop them. No trap would work. No ambush would succeed. They would tear through the human defenders like paper. Unless someone did something stupid. Opened her supply kit. Inside were 2 high-yield explosive charges, meant for demolishing structural supports. She looked at them for a long moment. She thought about her mother back home. Her mother was sick. The medical treatments were expensive. Had joined the Navy to pay for them. If she died here, the Navy would send money to her family. Her mother would be taken care of. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay." She strapped the charges to her chest. She checked the detonator. She opened the closet door. The war beasts were in the corridor ahead, sniffing the air, searching for prey. Their handlers walked behind them, directing them with electronic signals. Walked toward them. A handler saw her. He laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Look," he said to his companions, "a little human comes to surrender." Did not stop walking. She did not show fear. She looked the handler directly in his eyes. "I am not here to surrender," she said. "I am here to kill your pets." She triggered the detonator. The explosion killed all 20 war beasts. It killed their handlers. It collapsed 50 meters of corridor. And it killed Private Nam, 19 years old, who had wanted nothing more than to see her mother again. On the bridge of the Eternal Hunger, the tactical displays showed another wave of red markers going dark. "Warlord," the tactical officer said, his voice shaking, "we have lost 600 soldiers. 600 to 200 humans." Stared at the screen. He did not understand. This was not how war worked. Inferior species did not fight like this. They surrendered, they ran, they begged for mercy. But these humans did none of those things. They fought like demons. They died with weapons in their hands and curses on their lips. They turned every corridor into a slaughterhouse. "Begin bombardment," ordered. His officers hesitated. "Warlord, our troops are still inside the station." "I do not care. Kill everything. Burn it all." The guns of the Eternal Hunger opened fire. Plasma bolts slammed into station, tearing through metal and flesh without discrimination. Sections of the station broke away and tumbled into space. Fires erupted everywhere. But even then, the humans kept fighting. In the command center, Admiral Park watched her soldiers die one by one. The status board was almost entirely red now. Less than 50 of her people were still alive. The station was falling apart around them. Lieutenant was beside her, bleeding from a wound in his side. "Admiral," he said, "we should consider the reactor, if they take the station intact." Nodded, she had always known it would come to this. "Get everyone to the central hub," she said. "We make our last stand there, and when it is over I will destroy the reactor myself." Saluted, "It has been an honor, Admiral." "The honor is mine, Lieutenant." They had held the station for 5 hours and 47 minutes. They had killed over 800. They had shown the galaxy what humans were made of. Now it was time to finish it. The Council's observation drones were everywhere. They floated in space, recording everything, broadcasting to 1,000 worlds. It was standard procedure. When a system fell to the Council wanted documentation. They wanted records for their archives. They did not expect anyone to actually watch. But when the first reports came in from station, something unusual happened. People started paying attention. On the High was eating his evening meal when his assistant interrupted him. "My lord," the assistant said, "there is something you should see." Was annoyed. He was old, even by standards. He had lived for 3,000 years. He had seen the rise and fall of empires. He had negotiated treaties that shaped the galaxy. He did not care about another military defeat at some forgotten station. But his assistant was insistent, so went to his viewing chamber and activated the screen. He saw humans fighting. Not retreating, not surrendering, fighting. He watched a human soldier charge a position with nothing but a piece of broken metal. The soldier killed 2 enemies before falling. He watched a young woman walk into a room full of war beasts with explosives strapped to her body. He watched defenders collapse tunnels on their own positions, burying themselves along with the enemy. "Why?" asked. His crystalline voice was soft with confusion. "Why do they fight when there is no hope?" His assistant had no answer. Kept watching. On the ocean world of Tethys, Admiral Ryu was meeting with the Council of Depths. They were an ancient species. They had lived in the oceans of there for 50,000 years before they ever looked at the stars. They were wise. They were patient. They were completely unwilling to fight. "They will come here eventually," said. "Your oceans will not protect you. Your neutrality will not save you. You must join the fight." The first speaker, a massive creature with bioluminescent patterns rippling across her body, shook her head slowly. "We do not fight," she said. "We have never fought. It is not our way. Your way will get you killed. Then we will die, but we will not become something we are not." Was about to argue when a junior aide swam into the chamber. The aide's lights were flashing wildly. Something was wrong. "First speaker," the aide said, "you need to see this. Everyone needs to see this." The viewing screens activated. The council watched in silence as the battle for station unfolded. They saw Lieutenant leading a charge against a barricade. He was shot 3 times. He kept fighting until his body gave out. They saw Sergeant standing over the bodies of his fallen squad, still firing, still cursing, still refusing to die. They saw Admiral Park on the bridge of the command center, calmly directing her forces while plasma fire exploded around her. "They are insane," one of the council members said. "No," said the first speaker. Her voice was strange, thoughtful. "They are something else, something we have forgotten." She turned to Ryu. "Admiral, your people are dying." "Yes," said, "they are. They will not survive." "No, they will not." "Then why do they fight?" Had thought about this question many times. He had asked himself the same thing when he received the briefing about the doctrine of defiance. He had asked himself again when he learned that 200 soldiers had volunteered to stay behind at station. "Because surrender is worse than death," he said finally. "Because if they run, they die with shame. If they fight, they die with honor. And because somewhere, someone might be watching. Someone might see what they did and decide that if humans can stand against impossible odds, then maybe they can too. The first speaker was silent for a long moment. Her lights flickered through patterns that did not recognize. "We have ships," she said. "Fast ships, many of them." Held his breath. If they departed now, could they reach station in time? The first speaker looked at her council. They were old, these. They had lived for centuries. They had built their entire civilization on the principle of avoiding conflict. But something had changed in this room, something that could feel but could not name. Not in time to save the station, admitted, but perhaps in time to save whoever is left, and perhaps in time to make the pay for what they have done. The first speaker turned back to her council. For 10,000 years, we have watched the galaxy from our oceans. We have told ourselves that the wars of others were not our concern. We have believed that if we did not fight, we would not be harmed. She rose from her position, her massive body filling the chamber. We were wrong. They will come for us. They will drain our oceans and enslave our children. And when they do, we will have no one to blame but ourselves. She looked at the screen, where a human soldier was dying with a smile on her face. These creatures are not strong. They are not powerful. They are soft and fragile, and they live for barely a century. But they have something we lost long ago. They have courage. Her voice hardened. It is time we remembered what courage looks like. The vote was quick, unanimous. For the first time in 10,000 years, they went to war. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. On the swarm queens watched the broadcast and remembered ancient stories of their own warriors. They had not fought a real battle in 3,000 years. They had grown soft, comfortable, afraid. But the humans were not afraid. The swarm queens ordered their carriers to launch. On the crystal cities, Hai made a decision that shocked his entire species. He called for a military response, not a token gesture, a real response, every ship they could spare. "If these humans can fight," he said, "then so can we. If these humans can die for what they believe in, then perhaps it is time we believed in something too." Even they who had not left there in 500 years began to stir, and the collective, who had sworn never to take sides in any conflict, broke their ancient vow. One by one, the species of the Galactic Council remembered what they had forgotten. They remembered that peace was not given, it was earned. They remembered that freedom was not free, it had to be fought for. And they remembered that sometimes, the smallest voice could be the loudest. On Earth, General watched the fleet indicators appear on his tactical display. 1 fleet, 2, 3, a dozen. His aide looked at him in disbelief. "General, are those council ships?" Nodded slowly, his eyes were wet. "They are watching," he said. "They saw what our people are doing, and they are finally fighting back." He reached for the communications console. "Get me Fleet Admiral. Tell her to take every ship we have and rendezvous with the council fleets. We are going to station." His aide hesitated. "Sir, our ships are slower than theirs. We might not make it in time." "Then we will be late," said. "But we will not be absent. Our people are dying to give the galaxy hope. The least we can do is show up." The human dreadnought Defiance launched from Earth orbit, followed by every warship humanity could muster. They were going to station. They were going to finish what their brothers and sisters had started. Admiral Park was the last human alive on station. She sat in the ruins of the command center, her back against a shattered console. Blood dripped from wounds she had stopped counting. Her uniform was torn. Her weapon was empty. Around her, the bodies of her soldiers lay where they had fallen, still clutching their guns, still facing the enemy. They had fought for 6 hours and 14 minutes. They had killed over 800. They had turned a simple station into a legend. Now it was over. The sound of cutting torches came from the main door. They were breaching the last barrier. In a few minutes they would pour through and kill her, or capture her. She did not know which was worse. But she still had one card left to play. In her hand she held a dead man's switch. It was connected to the station's reactor, which she had rigged to explode during the last hour of fighting. When her hand opened, when her heart stopped beating, the reactor would detonate. The explosion would destroy what remained of the station and take at least 10 ships with it. It was not victory, but it was something. The door began to glow red. The cutting was almost complete. "Admiral Park." The voice came from the speakers. It was deep and rough like stones grinding together. "Recognized it. Supreme Warlord. You have fought well," continued. "Better than any species I have ever encountered. Your soldiers killed 800 of my finest warriors. You turned this worthless station into a graveyard." Laughed. It hurt. Everything hurt. "Is this the part where you offer me surrender?" she asked. "Yes, put down your weapon, release the switch. I will grant you an honorable death. Quick, painless, you have earned that much." Looked at the switch in her hand. She thought about her soldiers, who had died protecting a corridor, who had turned the station's own systems into weapons, who had walked into death with a smile on her face. They had not died for surrender. They had died for something more. "You still do not understand," said. "This was never about winning." "Then what was it about?" "Buying time." Was silent for a moment. Then he spoke again, and this time there was something different in his voice, something that might have been confusion. "Buying time for what? Your fleet is 3 days away. There is no one coming to save you." Smiled. Blood ran down her chin. "Not to save me," she said, "to save everyone else." The door exploded inward. Soldiers poured through the gap, their weapons raised, their armored bodies filling the room. Himself was among them, towering over his warriors like a mountain of muscle and hate. He looked at the switch in her hand. He understood. "If you detonate that reactor," he said, "you will die." "I am already dead," replied. "I have been dead since I decided to stay on this station. But my death will mean something. It will mean that you lost ships. It will mean that you wasted time. And it will mean that everyone watching knows that humans do not go quietly." Took a step forward, then another. His 4 hands were empty. His posture was not threatening. "You are insane," he said. "Your entire species is insane." "Maybe," agreed. "But we are also stubborn and we never give up, not ever." Was about to respond when alarms began blaring across his fleet. Every ship, every station, every tactical display. The sensor officer's voice came through his communicator, high and panicked. "Warlord, ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel, hundreds of them." Spun around. Through the shattered windows of the command center he could see them. Ships of every size and shape, appearing from nowhere, filling the space around station. The First Fleet, their vessels sleek and silver, built for speed. The swarm carriers, massive hive ships carrying millions of warriors. The Crystal Armada, beautiful and deadly, their hulls gleaming like diamonds. And at the center of the formation, flying the flag of United Terra, the dreadnought Defiance. "All vessels, this is Fleet Admiral of the Combined Galactic Defense Force." The voice rang out across every frequency, reaching every ship, every soldier, every corner of the battlefield. "The advance ends here." Stared at the fleet in disbelief. This was impossible. The Council species did not fight. They ran. They surrendered. They calculated their losses and retreated. But something had changed. Something had woken them up. He looked at Park, bleeding and broken and still holding the dead man's switch, still smiling. "What have you done?" he demanded. "We reminded them what courage looks like," she said. "We showed them that even the weakest species can hurt the strongest enemy. We proved that fighting without hope is still fighting." The combined fleet opened fire. Plasma bolts and energy beams and missile swarms slammed into the ship's fleet, already battered from the battle for the station, could not withstand the assault. In his earpiece heard his commanders screaming. Ships were exploding. Lines were breaking. The impossible was happening. They were losing. "Retreat," ordered. "All ships retreat." His soldiers grabbed him and dragged him toward the escape pods. Watched them go. She did not try to stop them. She did not need to. The battle was over. The war was just beginning. 3 hours later, a rescue team from the Defiance found Admiral Park unconscious in the command center. She was still holding the dead man's switch. She was still alive. When she woke up in the medical bay, General was sitting beside her bed. "You did it," he said. "You actually did it." Looked at him with tired eyes. "How many of my people survived?" Was silent for a long moment. 17 out of 212. Closed her eyes. 195 dead. 195 soldiers who would never go home, never see their families, never grow old. "Was it worth it?" she asked. The Council is unified for the first time in 8,000 years. Every species has pledged their fleets to the war effort. They are retreating on all fronts. Because of what happened here, because of what your soldiers did, the galaxy has hope. He took her hand. "Yes," he said, "it was worth it." The war lasted 3 more years. The empire was broken. Their warlords were killed or captured. Their fleets were destroyed. The galaxy was free. And everyone remembered who had started it. Everyone remembered the 200 humans who had stood against impossible odds and refused to break. 10 years after the battle, a memorial was built on the rebuilt station. 200 names carved in steel. 200 heroes who had given everything. Commander, daughter of Sergeant, stood before the memorial. She was 23 years old now. She had grown up hearing stories about her father, about how he had died fighting for something greater than himself. She placed her hand on his name. Behind her, dignitaries from a dozen species waited in respectful silence. And 100 others who had once thought humans were worthless. They did not think that anymore. "They called us primitive," said, her voice carrying across the plaza. "They said we did not belong among the stars. They said we were too young, too weak, too fragile to matter." She turned to face the assembled crowd. "My father and his comrades proved them wrong, not with powerful weapons or advanced technology, with something simpler, with courage, with stubbornness, with the absolute refusal to give up even when giving up was the only sensible choice." She looked up at the stars above the station. 1,000 ships from 100 worlds hung in space. A fleet that had never existed before humanity showed them how to fight. "The stars do not belong to the powerful," said. "They do not belong to the ancient or the wise or the advanced. The stars belong to those who are brave enough to reach for them, and stubborn enough to die trying." She saluted the memorial. "This is our legacy, not the battles we won, not the enemies we defeated, but the simple truth that we taught the galaxy, that no one is too small to matter, that no cause is too hopeless to fight for, that even when the stars themselves seem to hold their breath, waiting for us to fail, we stand." The crowd was silent. Somewhere in the infinite darkness between the stars, a legend was being told. A story passed from species to species, from world to world, from generation to generation. The story of the humans who taught the galaxy how to fight. The story of the 200 who stood when everyone else ran. The story of when humanity took the battlefield, and even the stars seemed to hold their breath. It was a story that would be told forever. Because some stories are too important to forget. And some heroes are too stubborn to die.